Well, morning, everyone. Good to see so many of you here after last night's proceedings. We're going to talk about international perspective, and we've got a great panel here. I'll just introduce them briefly. So we've got Sami, Daud on my far left. Sami probably actually doesn't need an introduction. He's been in the industry a very long time. He's managing director of the Daud Group, and he's invested in all sorts of different restaurant ventures over the years. We have Ahmass Fakahany, all the way from New York. He's the owner of the Altamarea group. This is Ahmass over here. And he's got 20 restaurants, mainly in New York, but 1 or 2 international as well. So that's very exciting to have someone from New York join our panel. We have Naim Maadad from Gates Hospitality. And they have a very interesting range of homegrown concepts, mainly in Dubai, I think, including, I read with interest, an après-ski chalet. So that sounds amazing, a ski chalet in the desert. And last but not least, Amit Nayak from HAMA. They are asset managers and have 18 hotels under management and actively looking for new F&B concepts. So, you know, it's that tall guy over here. If you're looking for a partner in Dubai, maybe that's your man. So I think we can cover an interesting range of topics. Let's sit down, guys, and get started. We thought rather than do the usual boring, how do you expand internationally, we're gonna go into specific topics that this panel is very knowledgeable about. So as we have someone from New York, let's talk about the US and New York. We know a lot of good brands that go to the US and they fail. They're an amazing success in their home country, but they can't crack it in the US. What's the secret of succeeding in New York?
Well, New York, as many of you know and visit, is an amazing market, a lot of density, affluence, excitement. A lot of people love New York, but New York does not always love you back. And part of the reason is operating in New York is difficult. Despite some levels of sophistication, there are many other parts that aren't. With regard to the landlords and real estate, one of the challenges is very fragmented. It's a very fragmented city. You have individual landlords, families, corporations, hotels, and they all operate differently, and they have different lease structures. So there isn't that standardization. That makes it difficult, and landlords in New York are very resilient to lowering prices. So what we heard earlier yesterday about integration with the landlord and working together and trying to find a win-win is not really what's happening in New York, unless it's a developer who wants a brand.
Sounds like London.
Yeah, so it's not so friendly. The regulatory structure, quickly, is also very fragmented. You have to operate and deal individually with the building department, the fire department, community boards, the state liquor authority. So there's so many ways to die en route to the opening, because you have to deal with each one of these things individually. It's not, connected. And the other thing, I think, is people don't always understand the New York client, who is really difficult and very demanding, and your reputation cannot precede you and give you the tailwind. You have to earn it. And they want value, and they think they know best. And so the combination of these 3 or 4 things, concurrently with the client wanting value and experience, makes New York hugely alluring, but also treacherous if you don't enter with these 4 or 5 dynamics in your mindset.
So what would be your advice to someone looking to open in New York? What's your number 1 tip?
I would say, well, first of all, keep an eye on the peach, because there is a real opportunity. New York leads to many other cities in the United States. It's like the song, if you can make it there. So, don't lose sight of that. But, without thinking of ourselves only, talk to people like us. We're on our, 6th liquor attorney. We've gone through so much We've been through a few dishwashers to get to this point. And so I would talk to the right people. I would be very thoughtful. Don't think once you get to JFK, you're done. It requires a real study and understanding the nature of the consumer. The other thing I'll say quickly is understand the labor model. It's also quite litigious versus the labor model outside, in other areas. There's a lot of lawsuits as part of the business cost. My advice is think very carefully, really study it, forecast a lower top line, and assume the first year or two will have some headwinds.
Okay, thank you. That's really useful. Thank you very much. So maybe in view of those challenges, it might be easier to enter the US, not through, a wholly owned restaurant, but through maybe a franchise or management model that might work better, possibly. But equally, I've heard some people say franchising is far too risky for my business model because I'm too worried that the franchisee will mess it up. Now, I know some of you have been active in franchising. I know you have, Sami. What do you think? Is franchising risky? Does it work for restaurants?
Franchising is always risky because in the grand scheme of things, you are taking over a mandate of an operator, expecting the operator to support you in every step of the way. Now, if that operator does not have the scale or the team that can always take that forward, you are just, all you're doing is getting a label on top of your outlet and you're running it the way you do. That can be done without a franchisee, if that's all what you want.
But that's about picking the right franchisee,
Precisely.
Correct? Someone with restaurant operating
Precisely.
experience, not someone with a ton of cash who's never owned a restaurant before. We're looking at Sami there, because I know you've made this happen for brands. Maybe share your point of view.
I think, is franchising risky from a franchisor perspective? It is, but it's a marriage, and you need to pick your partner. You need to do your homework. As long as you're willing to, let's call it, invest in the relationship, and not think of it as a quick win, as a you know what, I want to use it as an opportunity to make some quick money and get out of there and actually go and support the franchisee. I think that's where you are minimizing the risk.
Yeah. Have you franchised any of your restaurants?
We have. The fact, I want to take a step back actually, rather than talking about franchise or white label. I think in any market, excuse me, in any segment, there needs to be two distinctive silos. One is global, one is local. Mm-hmm. Global is what's happening around the world, all of the rules and regulations that are applicable to any particular business. Local is understanding market maturity, understanding audience maturity, understanding what's happening on the ground, and last but not least, it's really getting a grip on who the partner may be or who the audience are. Yeah. And I think once you establish that, then you can say, I can play in this market, or I should be playing in this market, or I shouldn't be playing in this market.
Yeah, and that's maybe from my experience, because I do a lot of work in hospitality franchising. Opportunistic franchising is risky. So if some guy out of the blue writes to you and say, hey, I've eaten at your restaurant, I'd like to take it to Mumbai, just really query if that is a good idea, even if they're willing to write you a check, which may be tempting. Will they damage the brand? Will they really deliver? But I think beyond that, franchising well done is not risky, and certainly no more risky in the Middle East than anywhere else in the world.
Correct.
For me, I think one of the things that we always look for is more of a manchise than a franchise. Always like to have somebody who wants to, where we are investing 80-90% of the time, effort, and money in that, we would want them to also have their skin in the game. And this is something that we always prefer, that if you're bringing a partner from anywhere else, one, adding to what Naim said, is definitely they need to know that what fits in New York should fit in Dubai or anywhere else as well, because normally it does not. Normally you have to change it, you have to localize it to what are the need, want, desires of that market, and then take it forward. And definitely, if they have their skin in the game, they make sure and they ensure that that happens. Otherwise, they always leave it to the franchisor that this is what it's going to be all about.
Franchise, that's a big word at the moment. So what's meant by that is that the franchisor does a little bit more than give the brand and the menu and some training. They have more of a hands-on involvement in the management, maybe through secondment of staff. Maybe they might provide the restaurant manager on secondment for the first 6 months. Maybe they might operate longer term.
Well, I think in a franchise deal done well, you should be getting that anyway.
From a good
So,
franchisor.
From a good franchisor. And so
Yeah.
it's not only about, let me give you, this is a manual and these are the recipes and off you go. It's actually getting much more than that and getting personnel and getting, we have a lot of franchisors where they have somebody from their team based, let's say, in Dubai, looking after the Middle East market, so looking after all of our stores, right?
Yeah.
And this is very, very important to being successful.
That's protecting the brand and delivering over and above. As a master franchisor or a franchisor, I think you have that onus on your shoulders to protect the brand. Because every franchisee is not necessarily at the same level of where you want your business. So the onus is on the franchisor to make sure that they hold the business, keep evolving the business, and make sure that delivery is done through the same channels.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the franchise as well. I think franchise is a great example as well, but it all depends on who the partners are. Because if they don't have that value, if they don't have that skill set in-house, then franchising will become an obstacle rather than anything else. They'll add fuel to your fire rather than solutions.
And I think
your
that
problems.
goes to due diligence as well, doesn't it? When you're talking to, maybe you've seen a really cool brand and you want to bring it to Dubai, and maybe they only got 2 restaurants. Are they really ready to support you out there?
Definitely.
Yeah, that can be a mistake that you see made, that, people grasp that opportunity, but actually they haven't got the resource to support.
Well, it's the mistake of both. It's a mistake of the person wanting the franchise, and of course it's a mistake of the franchisor because he looks at it as a bit of a cash windfall, right?
Yeah.
But the majority of franchises and restaurants opening up are actually 2, 3 units, and somebody eats there, says, "Oh, this is great. Let me bring it over."
The way I've done it well, and then I'll move on, although it is my favorite topic, is to give like an assistant restaurant manager from London the opportunity to have a year in Dubai, because I'd love that opportunity, and they can bring with them the culture and fuse the local restaurant with it. But, talking about Dubai, one of the other things we said yesterday is, isn't the market completely saturated? Does it make any sense at all to bring another burger joint or pizza joint to Dubai? Or do I not see plenty of empty dining places every time I come and visit? I mean, is there any more opportunity out there, guys?
I don't think the market's saturated. I think the market's oversaturated, and there's a big difference. I also don't believe the market's mature. I think people confusing maturity and supply. But is there a need for new venues, new brands? Yes, it's a happening market. There's always a need for new businesses, new blood, new stories, new experiences. Nonetheless, it's your location, your concept definition, your market relevance, your market understanding, and last but not least, your business model. Who does it talk to? So I don't think there's ever going to be a day where a market cannot welcome new brands. It's, have you done your due diligence? Are you ready to say, I'm going to make this work until I die?
Yeah. You guys have opened in Dubai, haven't you? How's that going?
Well, it's early days, but we're actually happy to be there. It's true, Dubai has thousands and thousands of restaurants, but so does New York. It's, you have to be competitive. We have a restaurant called Maadad that just opened recently at the IFC, and it's high-end Italian. We're happy to be there, but also Amazonica just moved there from Madrid and London, and so did Indochine from New York. So, people still feel, back to the maturity point that was made, there's an opportunity to bring something new. There's an opportunity to move up the curve with the client base. There's different levels. For us, we're in fine dining in terms of that brand. Look, we will see, but we're there for the long term. We're there to be part of the place. And in my case, it's not a franchise, it's our own investment directly, which is a little scary at the same time. But as Jeremy King said yesterday, we didn't want to lose control. So, and to your point, the general manager for Marea in New York, on Central Park South, is the general manager for Marea in Dubai.
Well, there we go.
Okay,
That's a good way of doing it.
He's totally moved there, living there, not shuttling, and we sent a couple of chefs there as well. So it's a real integrated setup. You can book New York when you walk into Dubai directly, right into our systems there. We'll see how it goes, but even though when you're flying and landing, you see all these towers and restaurants and people, it reminds me of New York. You have to compete, you have to differentiate. Hopefully your pricing is right, and hopefully they like what you do.
We're missing the population. We don't have New York's population, and that's a big change, big game changer.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get the ones who want to come visit.
The ones with the money.
No, I think, I agree. We don't have the population, but, as Naim said, is it oversaturated? Yes, it is. But there's still, like in any city in the world that has, maybe an oversaturation of restaurants, there's still room for really great places. Food, ambiance, pricing, that's obviously becoming more and more important now. So there is space for that, because some restaurants have opened up in areas where, where there are already too many restaurants, yet they're really good, so they're doing really well.
Yeah.
The ugly ones aren't, right?
So, Amit, in your hotels, what are you looking for?
So
what
normally
kind of
the
F&B?
key differentiator is what's new. Why should anybody come to our place? We work very closely with a lot of the big operators, and this is where the differentiation from one operator to the other comes. Some operators are very good in bringing in this new world chefs who have not experienced that kind of diversity what they see in Dubai. It becomes an fantastic test market for any of this at our dime, I have to say that as well. So we're very pragmatic about how we go about it. So if you're looking at an investment, definitely I would not look at a 20, 30,000 square feet F&B space anymore, which earlier used to be the norm. You have one too many of them which have failed as well. So for us, we look at small white spaces which are very dynamic. We can evolve it every 3-6 months. Maybe every year we can do some small nuances and changes and bring in something new there. We work with some very renowned chefs as well, where it's a pure management, so we manage control because we are the local partners. So we advise, we work with them very stringently, but the delivery is what is their ethos. That is their delivery, and it works. So going back to what we are talking about is that definitely there is always scale. That is the challenge. That can you have another 20 restaurants of a single brand there? Maybe not. But can you have 1 or 2 of a brand across Dubai in proper locations where the market is still there? Yes, why not?
That's good to hear. So coming to our last question that we agreed to discuss, let's just look beyond where we're all from and look at the new frontiers out there. What exciting new markets do you see on the horizons? Is it Baku? Is it Africa? Where's the next hot place?
You said exciting and new. Some are new, but some are exciting. So we have Saudi Arabia, new. A lot of work to be happening on that market, and I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for a lot of brands to explore that
So you guys going into Saudi?
So I'm not investing in Saudi. I'm giving a lot of consultation work rather than investing purely by choice. The other market that I'm looking at very attentively is Africa.
Okay. And anything specific in Africa, particular countries?
The market is very, very young, so there's lots of opportunities. Looking at Kenya, Uganda, these markets where we see a lot of vacuums in the marketplace, from QSR and cafes rather than anything else.
Interesting, interesting. I assume you have your hands full with Dubai, or you got another city on the horizon?
We're also in discussions with Saudi Arabia as well.
Okay.
Early days, but I'm also finding that the conversations around structure are a lot more sophisticated. It's not just franchisor or franchisee, it's hybrids, it's a piece of this, a bit of licensing fees, it's a piece of loan structures, it's a piece of equity structures, you know, so it's just interesting to just go through it, but definitely you have to be careful to protect your brand and a whole bunch of other things. So look, you know, from Dubai, we're seeing if there's a collective thought process and education that we learn to understand more about the possibilities in the Middle East, even though we have to be thoughtful. Definitely looking at Asia, you know, I lived there for 10 years and, you know, it takes time, but there's a lot of people out there who like brands and like to move up the curve of what they'd like to eat. And for us, still, the United States is, we were talking yesterday, is not a small market.
No.
We're pretty much on the East Coast. And, you know, there are enough cities, and even the second-tier cities, if you will, like Indianapolis and Pittsburgh and so forth, have, you know, enough depth to add some scale as well. So I would say these are the three areas that we will just look at, take phone calls, do the due diligence, get our head around it, risk manage the best we can, and see if we can get a good return.
Yeah, thank you. Let's not forget the United States, quite right. Everyone gets so excited about new emerging market and doesn't look at the big economies. How about you, Sami? Are you going to stay put in Dubai, or are you going to go?
No, we're actually, so you know, we work with many many brands, and some brands that we currently don't work with. But what we are looking at now, we're looking at two opportunities. One is taking a European brand to the U.S., to the West Coast, in partnership with somebody in the U.S. And we are looking at a brand from the U.S., bringing it to the U.K.
Okay,
Again,
so going actually completely outside the GCC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But doing it in both cases, doing it in partnership with existing operators in the UK and in the US.
Yeah.
So we're not, you know, I'm not one to say we're gonna run restaurants in London and in Los Angeles. I think we wouldn't be able to do that from Dubai.
To your point, Sami, I did the same 2 years ago. I bought a brand out of New York to London. But to mitigate the risk, we chose a very strong location, Covent Garden, right in the center, and a very strong brand.
A very strong?
Brand.
Yeah.
New York, to Red Farms, extremely strong performance. And to top that up as well, to complement that, we went with a local operator, because it's a market that we haven't played for before. So I think early entry, 2-3 years, once you understand the market, once you've been operating in a particular market, you can start edging in and flexing your muscle in that particular market from an operational perspective as well as investment.
So that's interesting. The big cities will always be there, right? London, New York,
yeah.
Paris, Dubai. And let's just hear from the hotel perspective, because of course a lot of food is eaten in hotels. Are you going to new?
Yeah, so for us how it works is that with the association has got many owners, a whole bunch of it from Saudi, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait. A lot of these owners also have investments in Africa. So we work very closely with all of them, have our collective advices, be it operator selection for the hotel itself, be it F&Bs for their outlets, like something that works for us, say in Dubai, we'll advise them on how it works, why it works, what are the nuances that they need to be careful about, and so on and so forth. So across these geographies, we have a very strong partnership, and that is the whole idea behind HAMA. Now here, Saudi definitely with the sheer amount of scale that is coming in, that has the most demand for new businesses that is coming in. Oman, even if it is not as big a market, a lot of things that are moving in Oman with the new hotels and everything else. Kuwait is surprisingly coming out now after a long sort of calm there. Africa always very exciting. A lot of new projects, a lot of small projects, boutique hotels and everything else. So there you have a lot of need for these small, innovative chefs to come up and do something different.
Thank you so much. I see we're sort of nearly down to our allotted time, so I was just going to open it up for questions. If there's any questions for our panel from the audience, then I think we probably can fit in 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, please, I think that's...
Hi, we've seen from the previous talk with Biatwan and Reese how wet sales are significant, but across the Middle East there are some areas such as Kuwait, Saudi, Bahrain, where wet sales probably aren't so important for particular operators. How does that work with you guys in terms of investment, and how does it affect the operators who exist in places where wet sales aren't so significant?
Naim?
Look, it's a business model. It's all about market relevance. So what works here doesn't work elsewhere. So the wet part or the liquor part is you're not alone. It's how the market operates. So it's a given standard, and you build your P&L, you build your projections based on the market you're playing in. I think will change sooner than later. Will change. We're seeing a massive shift, but that's like I said, you're performing in a market like everyone else.
But I will say, what we have found, I mean, none of our units have any alcohol, but I will say mocktails, if you have the right, let's call it mocktail list, you'd be surprised how much money you can make from selling those drinks. How much you can charge for them, and they just, keep on ordering them again and again and again. So there's a lot of money in that.
Thank you. Another question? Or it's hard to see. It's got shiny light right in my eye.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening to us. I'm going to stay on because I have an award to give. Thanks. Good to see you. Nice to see you.